Chapter 2. Mehrit stood at the door of her home, scanning the road. Away to the west, the sun was setting in an angry red behind the house roofs, and her small brother was wailing for his supper. She had not felt frightened till now, because, after all, the queues for food distribution were often long, and she had known that her parents might be away all day, but not as late as this. A small thrill of fear shot through her, because anything could happen these days. Something was always happening, only you did not talk about it. Hunger, thirst, disappearance, sudden death, and the endless fog of secrecy. Things that must not be said, words that were only whispered, things that you overheard but must never know. It had become a way of life, and it was all right as long as you kept together. But today, they had been apart, and night was falling swiftly, and her parents had not come home. She turned back to her brother, who was now roaring and beating the floor with his hands, but it was not much of a show, because he was a delicate child who had little strength. There was still food to be bought in the government-held towns, but it was terribly expensive, and there wasn't too much of it. Yet today, the news had circulated that trucks were on the road, loaded with food and heavily protected by armed forces. People would dare to come from the countryside, and her father had gone to meet his brother, for he had not seen his family for a long time. It was not easy to pass from the towns to the wild country of the freedom fighters, but the market was a meeting place. Her mother had gone too, to carry an extra sack. Mehrit had wanted them all to go together, with Tekla on the mule, but it was a long expedition, and Tekla tired easily. She turned to attend to him, glad of something to do that would pass the time, but she was too late, for he had fallen into an exhausted sleep. She lifted him onto the bed, for he would not wake now till morning, then fetched meal to make injera, the soft pancakes that formed their staple diet. She mixed the dough and laid a small fire on the hearth, and then went to the door to look again. When she saw her parents coming up the white, moonlit road, she would light it. She gazed up into the deep blue, and stars appeared above the ragged silhouette of the mountains. It was cold at night, high up in the plateau, and she shivered a little and turned to tuck the burnous round Tekla. It was then that she heard the running feet and knew that there was bad news. For unless the news was important, people did not run by night in this province. They stayed indoors, and some were so weak they could no longer run anyway. Besides, there were guards in the streets, and they wanted to know everybody's business. But she knew who this messenger was even before she saw him, because Fikre was always dodging the guards. He was thin and fast. He always knew exactly when the moon would rise, and he always ran in the shadow of the wall. She opened the door just wide enough to let him slip through, and then shut it quickly behind him. He sat down, too out of breath to speak, and she waited, a hand on her heart, as if she could still its wild beating. When it was a little quieter, she said, "What is it? Tell me. It's my parents, isn't it?" But her mouth was so dry that she could only whisper. He was sitting with his head in his hands, and he could only nod. After a few moments he told her, but without looking up. "They have taken them for a settlement," he said, so quietly that she had to stoop to hear the words. "Many people came to the market to buy grain. There were many soldiers, many guns, and armored cars to protect the trucks. Suddenly, there was screaming and confusion and shots, and people running in all directions, even spilling the grain. They were seized as they ran and pushed into the trucks at gunpoint, men and women together, many and many of them. I saw your parents crying out that they had left children at home, but no one listened. The doors were slammed, and the trucks roared off.